up, everyone? Welcome to Yorkshire Gamers, Elite Big Wargames podcast, episode number 10. That's a bit of an achievement. We set out to do this 4.5 months ago with a drunken tweet about the lack of podcasts about big games. And here we are, 10 episodes of the pilot later. And we're still in business. We've not been sued. We've not been taken off the air by the broadcasters. We're still going strong. And as I mentioned in the last episode, we've got 5 guests booked in for the next 5 episodes, plus a catch-up episode and potential of a magazine episode. And I'm already thinking about guests going forward as far as certainly November this year. I've got somebody booked in. So, the growing audience that we've got, it's fantastic to see. Every week we're getting more followers, more listens, and that's lovely to hear. So if this is your first episode, welcome to Yorkshire Gamers podcast. And you've picked a really good episode to join us with. Today's guest is John Lander, and John, maybe not a name that's immediately familiar with you, but my God, does this lad do big games. And it's his first podcast as well. I think 7 out of the 10 guests that we've had so far have been podcast virgins. And that's great to see. As I've said before, one of the things I want to do is to get people who've maybe not had a voice on a podcast before and get to chat to them and get their points of view on the bigger game. And John is definitely one who couldn't fill us in on some stuff with that. And it was a fantastic interview. We had a right good laugh. I've probably cut about half an hour of stuff off that would have got us sued or banned from various places. But it was a really good, fun episode, and I hope you enjoy it as well. We personally, at work, it's been really, really busy, and I'm kind of a little bit behind on schedule. But everything is a-okay, and go for the podcast staying on its current second and fourth weeks of the month being released. So, not much more for me to say. I hope you enjoy this episode. And I'll be back with you in an hour or so, a couple of hours, and we'll have a chat at the outro. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 10 of Yarkshire Gamers, Elite Big Wargames podcast. And after a short trip to Doncaster in the last episode, we're getting back on the Yorkshire Airlines and we're going up and away to the USA. And this is our third continent in 10 episodes, which is not bad for a country lad. There have been a couple of themes that have reoccurred during these previous episodes. Big games, of course, the Wargames Holiday Centre, and if you listen closely, this lad's name came up a few times. So, with table sizes that will make your eyes water and tall tales of games gone by, let's give a huge welcome to John Lander from Yorkshire Gamers Elite Big Wargames podcast. Hello, John.
Hello, Ken. Nice to speak to you. Been looking forward to it.
Oh, good.
And the day is here.
Oh, excellent. Well, Mark Freeth, Mark from the Wargames Holiday Centre, he bigged you up. if that's what the kids are saying these days.
I understand it may well be. Well, if Mark Freeth thinks I'm worthy of your time, then that's got to be a good thing, as he is one of life's great gentlemen, I have to say. He
is a fantastic guy, and I very, very much enjoyed my podcast with him. It was a cracking couple of hours.
Yes, I listened to that. I listened to that one, and it was particularly good. But Mark is one of those people that if someone tells me they don't like him, I'm instantly suspicious of their entire life.
Yeah, I can't see a bad bone in him at all.
No.
And we just chatted. I probably could have done 2 episodes from all the bits I cut out. But mostly talking about rubbish football teams and what have you. But there we go. We had a very brief chat before we came. I started recording, and this is your first podcast, isn't it, John? You've not done one before.
I haven't. No, I'm a podcast virgin, and so be gentle with me, and please buy me dinner afterwards.
Oh well, we have a reputation on the Read Big Wargames podcast of virgins coming on, so you're very welcome. You're very welcome. We're going to do a 4-minute challenge. We're going to get your Wargames history in 4 minutes.
Okay.
So have you had a little preparation for it, or
I've had a little think about it. Whilst sort of, if any time there's any insomnia, I had a little sort of like go in my head, and I wrote a few notes down because I've got a terrible memory, you see. So a few notes and dates and things to make me sound intelligent. So yeah, absolutely.
That's what we like to do. Some people have over prepared and been extremely professional, whilst others have just been frankly appalling and
not I may fall somewhere in the middle. If I fall somewhere in the middle, I'll be pleased.
Great then. Right, well, I'll set my little timer going, and when we're getting within 30 seconds, you'll hear the music to count down, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you go too far, good old D.I. Regan from Sweeney will tell you to shut it.
Well, like previous people, I might have to deliberately go over just so I can hear Regan again.
Well, when you're ready then, I'll 3, 2, 1, and you are off.
Okay, well, my history, I mean, it probably mirrors a lot of people's, but my first memories of wargaming was my older brother, sadly lost him end of last year, but he gave me one of those small hardback books by Charles Grant, Introduction to Wargaming.
Yeah.
And it was I think I seem to remember it being published by Map Books or something. It was a small little A5, I think, book, and it was called Introduction to Wargaming. And in it had lots of shots of classic airfix figures, and there was rules in it for ancients, then horse and musket, and then World War II. And that just really sort of kicked me off. And I, like a lot of people of our era, I bought a lot of airfix and the tanks and the ready-made soft plastic 1/72 scale things they used to make, and which go for a fortune on eBay now. There was like using, for instance, Britain's baby elephants as war elephants for the ancient sets, and lots of things about converting the Sheriff of Nottingham set into generic medievals, and all sorts of things that really have just sort of stayed with me. The idea of converting stuff into other stuff, and then I played some American Civil War games because that was quite a big range by Airfix at the time. And I remember converting the French Foreign Legion set into Zouaves and things like this, and all sorts of things that my brother actively encouraged me to do. And at that age, always wondering what the hell banana oil was and how everybody else seemed to have access to it, and I had no idea what was going on. So that was my introduction, was that and the Airfix games, playing games on my mum's kitchen table with Airfix figures, the same as probably a lot of people actually. And then there was a great big gap of a fair few years, which I don't really want to go into too much. But after that, when I came back, it was via a friend of mine, Chris Cornwall, who does a lot with Mark Freeth, a lot of stuff. Great guy. One of my Bezzy mates, I'd have to say, is Chris Cornwall. And I was like getting into 28mm Napoleonics. And this led via a lot of strings and turns to WRG rules, which I didn't really like very much. And then I found an old copy of the Grand Manor rules in the Grand Manor. And I thought, this is what I like. This looks great, big units, lots of battalions. So I started just painting some connoisseur figures because they just seem to have a lot of sort of style and movement and flash to them, which I still really think they do, even with all the endless golden age stuff that we live in now of Napoleonic figures. I still like a lot of the old connoisseur stuff. So, and the Grand Manor rules led me and Chris inevitably to the Wargames Holiday Centre in Scarborough at the time. And I never went during the Peter Gilder days. I was after that. I went during the Jerry Elliott and the sadly now deceased legend that is Mike Ingham. Again, another superbly lovely man. And I used to go to the Holiday Centre in Scarborough for quite a few games. I played most of the big Napoleonic games up there, and it just made me paint up more and more of my Russian army at the time, I believe. And my friend Chris was doing Prussians, and my other friend Boot was doing Austrians, and we were all doing French. And so we had some big games of that, and that sort of led to my love of the big games of Grand Manor, and it sort of inspired me to dip my toe into bigger games of my own sort of thing. In parallel with that, I played then some World War II crossfire games with Artie Conliff's great game of no rules, no movement rates, no rulers. And that led on to another whole thing, which I'll touch on again later. And after that was Wars of the Roses games with Bloody Barons by Peter Pigg. And that leads me up to the present day with some 40k mixed in and some 40k Apocalypse again for the big games, which I like. And so that's my history. It's not as long as some people's, but
brilliant.
You know,
You speeded up a bit towards the end.
Oh yeah.
But we'll cover quite a lot of you what you've spoke about there anyway. I just like to put people under a little bit of pressure at the start. And, a couple of people have just gone Airfix figures, painting, big table. And it's kind of like, well, you've got 3 minutes 50 seconds left. Do you want to do any more?
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people of our age and era, Airfix was pretty much all there was, you know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of all our initial forays into gaming was lining up Airfix painted with, you know, gloss emulsion paints that your parents had lying around, you know, that sort of thing.
So without giving away your age and your date of birth and your PIN number for your bank card, just roughly how old are you?
I am let's be suitably vague. So I'm in my early 50s.
Early 50s. I like you didn't go for mid.
No.
You went for early. Good. I like that.
It'll be technically mid next year.
Oh, whereabouts in the UK were you from then?
I was from Cambridge.
And we're speaking today to you in Kentucky, aren't we?
We are indeed, yes.
In USA. So that Cambridge to Kentucky, via the Wargames Holiday Centre. That's a long way. Just if you don't mind, how did you end up in Kentucky?
It's like a bad film on a Sunday afternoon on BBC 4 or something, like Our Man in Kentucky. No, I used to work for an aircraft firm called Gulfstream, who do all the private jets and the corporate jets, and they used to send me to America for training courses for sort of 6 weeks at a time, 2 or 3 times a year, which was great fun, really good fun. We used to get all the work done, and then, you know, you're on like a per diem in a holiday town. It was great fun. Yeah. And I met a girl there, and she was a lot younger than me, way out of my league, absolutely beautiful. And she was originally from Kentucky. We met in Savannah, and she moved back to Kentucky, and we just got together, chucked up my job in England. Sadly sold off most of my collection of Napoleonics to various people, to some of the Wargames Holiday Centre. They took a lot of them, and other people took a lot of them. They spread themselves around the world quite a bit, and I sold up most of my collection of figures, to be fair, and I moved over to Kentucky, and I got married to this American girl, and that was in 2016, I think, which was great fun. I mean, you know, it was a proper big midlife crisis move. You know, I didn't go for the sports car or the motorbike or the growing stupid hair. Went for the adorable younger wife, and we had a great time. But sadly, that flamed out spectacularly the beginning of this year. So I'm now a man in Kentucky, a divorced man in Kentucky, enjoying life. It's great here. I mean, I'm having a great time, but with all the COVID and what have you, I wasn't allowed home for a long time. So I'm going to sort of take this year and see if I stay or if I go back home, or, you know, we'll see what happens really. See if I can afford the bills on my my current job later on. So we just sort of a bit of a wait and see really. I'm not making any promises, never say never, you know, and see what goes on. So that finds me now in Kentucky.
So with that, have you thought of sending that story to Nashville? Because there's got to be a couple of country and western songs in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of times I'm sort of like sitting here of an evening, and especially, I mean, not wish to get too political, but especially the last 4 years, I'm sitting here thinking, especially in Kentucky, think to myself, what on earth am I doing?
I think if you pitch the idea to Garth Brooks for a concept album about a lad from Cambridge who comes over to Savannah, meets a beautiful young lady, gets married and settles down, I think you've got a hit record there, mate. With that,
a hit record or a very bad ITV4 drama, one or the other.
I think the storyline is the same in both, to be honest. Very, very close, very close. Did you? I think I read on your. I've been having a look through your Facebook thing. Did you get COVID? Were you poorly for a while?
I did. Yes. It's sadly I caught it about the same time, the same sort of weekend that my wife moved out and all the divorce was happening. So it was a pretty manky few weeks, I have to say. But luckily, I caught a very minor dose of it, nothing respiratory or stuff that can really. But I just ached, every single bone in my body ached. I couldn't get out of bed. I had to sort of roll onto my front and spider crawl out of bed and crawl into the kitchen and try and make myself something to eat. And it was just a horrible sort of 2 or 3 weeks. And then just basically I spoke to the medical authorities over here, and they said, well, don't go to hospital because they're overflowing. Stay at home, drink lots of water, take tablets to keep your temperature down. And I had to fill out this online thing every day that came from the disease control people and take my temperature and let them know and all that sort of thing. So they sort of monitored me remotely, really.
So has COVID, because I know the health system is very, very different over there. Has COVID been dealt with as everyone gets free care for it? Or
yes, well, they did. Everyone got all the vaccinations were free, all the tests were free.
Yeah,
and it seemed to freak a lot of people out. They're going, "Hey, this is free. This is you go.
Isn't this really good?
Insurance, and you can just go and get it." And I'm there going, "Yes, this is what the rest of Europe is like all the time." And it's nice, isn't it? Not having to worry about it. They're going, "Oh yeah, this is great." You know, I'm going, "Oh my god, I feel like I'm doing missionary work over here."
Well, maybe it'll change things over there. I'm sure for the better.
It could do, but I'm all vaccinated up now and all fit and well, and so it's okay.
And we'll talk about your gaming life in the UK a bit later on. But have you had chance to do any gaming in the US?
Yes, actually, I fell on my feet a little bit. I went to a local gaming store, I suppose I should call it, really, to keep in with the locals. They have had a lot of games going on. It's quite a big shop, and it's got a lot of gaming tables at the back. And I got a chance to see like quite a big wide cross section of what's popular in America gaming wise. And then I took some of my stuff down there, and for instance, my big Wars of the Roses collection with the gorgeous Perry plastics and metal.
Oh yeah.
And people were like, "Whoa, English medievals. Whoa, let's go." So I dived in with that with the aforementioned Bloody Barons rules, which from Peter Pig, which are very, very British in style of writing and mechanics and that sort of thing. And so people down the local gaming store in Lexington, where I live in Kentucky, they took to them straight away. And so I often put on games using all the scenarios in the back of the rule book, and sometimes I'll marry it up to an actual anniversary of some of the bigger battles and things like that. And so I sort of contributed some of that, and I also do some World War I air gaming, which was purely an excuse for me to paint some old Airfix World War I aircraft, which I never could do justice in my youth. So I made up a set of rules called rather darkly, Empty Chairs in the Mess, they were called.
Oh, well, yeah.
They had a sort of campaign system where you started off as young snotty.
That's another track for your country and western album.
Yeah, exactly, yes. I took a note of these, was building all up. And so I did some World War I air gaming with French and British and some German stuff, and that was great fun, and people took to that as well. So they're sort of one of these projects that bubbles away in the background, and I'll write another few little bits to them now and again, sort of thing. And then I got to see what the Americans like to game. Yeah. And it's not that different, really. I mean, I think we're all gamers separated by a common ocean or whatever it is they say. But they do a lot of, obviously there's a lot of War of Independence games. They're very into that. Or Revolutionary War, as they call it over there. I called it AWI, and they didn't really know what I was on about. And ACW, of course, to the Americans is just CW, because they just have their own Civil War.
Did you not call it insurrection or something like that?
I did
Just to
call
really
it
wind them up.
I did call it the ungrateful colonists. First 13 or something.
I remember a friend of mine. He's back in the UK now, but he lived in Austin, Texas for quite a long time, and they tried to get him on a jury, and he just said, "No, I can't do it. I can't do it." And they were about to lock him up, and he said, "Look, please have a look in your history books. We had a war about English people." Being judging Americans, and I can't be on your jury. I'd love to, but I just can't.
I'm afraid history precludes it. Yeah,
so it's an excuse if you ever need it.
No, they have. I say a lot of a lot of Revolutionary War, Independence War, you call it. A lot of those games. A lot of the sort of American Texas. Yeah, that sort of thing. They have a lot of that going on. Lots of American Civil War games, obviously, because also Lexington and Kentucky and all that having a lot of stuff nearby where actual battles went on. But as gamers and people, the language is very common and the attitude is very common, and it's I found it a great way to sort of get to know people, and then they're a great bunch of guys. I should shout out Battleforge store in Lexington, because they're a great bunch of guys and they made me very welcome straight away, basically. And they do some World War II stuff, American War of Independence, ACW. There's a lot of the 40K stuff goes on, and the Age of Sigmar games that go on, and there's some great painters down there, and I've managed to get a lot of commission work for my painting stuff, which we'll come on to later. Down there as well, and a great bunch of guys. And I've been to a couple of other shops and places around, and it's there's more the same than is different. I'll leave it at that, shall we say.
Over here, we tend to have an old school club network, and we're getting more of game stores with tables in now, which I've noticed over the years. So is there a club network in the US, or is it mostly in store gaming?
It seems to me to be mainly stores with tables, and shops are clubs, but you can sort of go in there anytime you like and just set up a game if you've organized it with a couple of friends. And there's always a lot going on Wednesday nights. There's a lot of games going over the weekends. People go and have some of the larger games, which I've obviously, given the full nature of this podcast, I've gravitated towards.
Yeah, are you paying for? Do you pay per hour on the table, or is it a membership scheme? Or
no, it's all just completely free.
Oh wow, that is good.
It is great, because I think the way they see it is that people spend in the shop part of the shop and then game in the game part of the shop, So it's just all free. It's very casual. I mean, I've been to 2 or 3, and there's been no fees or anything like that, or subscriptions.
That's an interesting business model, because I've noticed there's a shop in Stirling in Scotland called Common Ground Games that started this business model, or probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even longer, and I just happened to see it when I was on holiday. And they have an hourly fee for the table, and then you have to buy a drink every 2 hours or something. It's like so they're bringing in money through that, right? Rather than just relying on shop sales. So I didn't realize the tables were free.
No, it's all free, and they have a fridge full of drinks and stuff, and you pay $1 for a drink or something, and which is quite good if you're gaming a long day. Yeah. When we come on to, I no doubt we'll come on to some of the Wargames Holiday Centre stuff. And, it can be a physical slog sometimes. It really can. So stuff like that, and it's quite casual. And I like it. It's very nice. I mean, I was in England. I was a member of the Huntingdon Wargames Club, who played a large part in my gaming life, and still friends of them all, obviously. And we used to meet once a week at a place in Huntingdon, and the Huntingdon and District Wargame Society. So
we always have brilliant names for our clubs, don't we?
Oh yeah. So I used to go there every week and put on. They had a lot of games on there. It was quite a thriving club, and I hope it's still going to pick up again after the lockdown has gone. They can carry on again, because they have also helped me out with a lot of big games at shows and stuff. So I shall I shall discuss and shout out those people later, no doubt.
Well, that's just brought me onto an interesting topic of dull and boring names for British wargaming clubs. Because I started off in the Northwich Wargames Society in Cheshire, and then I came over to Leeds in the 80s, and I've been a member of Leeds Wargames Club. The only one with an even vaguely exciting name I can think of was Mailed Fist. They were kind of Manchester, North Manchester, but apart from that, it's all Durham Wargame Society. And
yes, quite.
Come on, people.
I think it points to the whole British psyche. I mean, if you had like Mailed Fist Gaming Club, or if you have the Mailed Fist Gaming Club, a lot of people's instant reaction is, that all sounds a bit stupid, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah.
And I think it also strikes to things like, bizarrely, like the Americans call it Operation Desert Storm, you know, and we called it Operation Granby. You know, I mean, it's just the sort of understated nature of British people that we don't see certain things as being relevant to outlandishness, shall we say. There's certain things you just don't really care about, you know.
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of campaigns that have started as a result of this podcast, and a campaign for more exciting wargame clubs names is definitely what I'm going to put on. I'm going to have a banner made up, and
I think you should. I mean, it's crying out for it because of the dice thing, you know, the high rollers. I mean, it's crying out for adding that in there. You know, the Rotherham Rollers or something. Sound like a bad football team.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if you're familiar with rugby league, but for years and years, it's always been a bitter and a pie kind of half-time thing, and then they turned it into like the Leeds Rhinos and the Warrington Wolves, and all that sort of stuff.
Show.
Yeah,
so, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Which probably comes around full circle to what we were saying. My defences instantly go up. Oh, I'm not too sure about that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So I take this first section as an opportunity to talk about things that probably won't come up later on. And you've mentioned in passing quite a few of the ones that I was gonna have a quick chat about. And the first one you mentioned was painting commissions. Is that something that you do quite a bit of?
Yes, it's actually my job. It's my only job. When I first came over here, I sold my house in a little village near Cambridge, obviously for a huge amount of money, given where its location. Yeah, and I sold it completely furnished, so it got more money for that. It was like leaving the Marie Celeste. It just like, I just walked out with a bag of clothes and left it for the next people. Yeah. So I bought a house over here because it's a lot cheaper. And then I was sort of like just thinking, what should I do for a job? My wife was working, and I brought some of my figures and stuff with me, and she goes, "Oh, these are lovely. Did you paint these?" Because she knows nothing about gaming. Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, I did." She goes, "Oh, you could do this for a living." I was going, "Well, don't be daft. Of course I can't." She's going, "Well, have a go at it." She goes, "You're not doing anything. See what happens." So I did. So I got some business cards printed up, and I formed Battle Brush, which is my painting company. Yeah. And I got the first couple of commissions from guys at the local gaming store. So I've got myself a Facebook page, and I posted lots of stuff and all sorts of things on there. And it's just, I wouldn't say it's exploded, but it's just been gradually building up year on year on year. And I've got probably now half a dozen regulars. Makes me sound like some sort of dubious night walker. But I've got some really good customers who I enjoy working for, and it's been 5 years now, I think 4 or 5 years, something like that. Yeah. And it's still not a chore or a job, and I still really enjoy it. And I get a lot of variety of different commissions, and I do also basing up, and I do terrain pieces and scratch build buildings. I do all sorts of things, and I've got some really good customers. So I'll say I'm never going to be on the FTSE 100s or anything. It's not I don't make a huge amount of money, but I also, the same degree, I don't need to make a huge amount of money. I've done all, I say, with the aircraft industry stuff. I had a big wage, but it was a huge amount of pressure. I used to basically stamp off aircraft as fit to fly and all that sort of thing, and take all the responsibility. And I'm sort of done with that now. So I'm also my my commute is like 12 yards, which is great.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely.
So it's sort of it's bubbling along nicely. I'm making some money and stuff, and I'm just about I can shamelessly plug myself. I'm just about to start a new business as well, which is making let's call them gothic retro sci-fi models in resin, like a kit company.
Okay.
So I'm just sort of about to release my first release. I'm about to release my first model, and then we'll see how that goes. And I'm just sort of doing that as a sideline to it as well. And my obviously, because in America everyone has to do all their own taxes and stuff. There's no P45, P60 at the end of the year. So I was talking with a tax man who prepares my taxes for me. And he goes, officially now you are a CEO of an international group of companies. I was like, well, check me out. And he goes, that's great. I can do lots of tax breaks for you and all sorts of things. And so I'm a fat capitalist pig now.
Well, and you've got contacts in the private jet industry as well, haven't you?
It's a shame actually that I left that job, because I never wanted for masking tape, paint brushes, all sorts of weird exotic filler materials that I could use to sculpt terrain with, which was absolutely incredible. And about £10,000 a tin, which used to run out of date very quickly, and I just whisk it off home. And I built all my terrain for the big games, which are probably you'll see on the photographs that are slowly scrolling by as we're talking. And all this material I got an accident. I mean, I had to go out a few weeks ago because I'd finally run out of 2-inch masking tape after all these years. And I had to go out and buy some masking tape, and it nearly broke me inside, I tell you.
So this model that you're bringing out, then, is it for a specific game system, or?
Well, I'm wary of saying yes, but let's call it a Gothic style retro sci-fi model and leave it at that, shall we?
I think I can see where you're coming from. That brings me neatly onto the next thing on my list then, after painting commissions. Seamless, almost like I'd planned it and written it down before. As I say, I'm not stalking you, obviously. Our research is what I call it, on your Facebook, and a lot of the stuff you've painted is sci-fi stuff. Is that customer driven, or is that an interest? I mean, it sounds like it is an interest.
Well, to be fair, it's mainly customer driven. People say I do paint a lot of sci-fi stuff. And at the moment, actually, I'm doing a huge commission for a very good customer of mine for a game system, All Quiet on the Martian Front.
I think, did you have a couple of 3 Martian walkers on there? They were very nice.
I've got a big commission to do, painting up Martian tripods and sort of 15mm steam-powered World War I tanks with Tesla guns and all sorts of weird stuff on them. But they're great fun. And it was a bit of a challenge because I painted the sort of Martian tripods. They're about sort of like 6-7 inches high. And I painted them like they were in a 50s black and white B movie. So I used a palette of sort of like muted silvers and blacks and things like that. So they looked like they were in black and white, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was quite a challenge. But to your earlier question, yes, I just get a lot of 40K stuff mainly, and lots of Age of Sigmar stuff, but mainly 40K. I do get a lot of it to paint.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago now, but I did commissioning painting for 4 or 5 years in the early 90s. Yeah. And having that big client or big clients certainly helps, doesn't it? Because you can then spread out stuff over the months, and you know that if, as long as I paint these 2 units this month and those 2 next, I've got a steady income. And with other people.
Also, with him being a steady income, I go a bit of the extra mile, and I'll do some conversions, and I'll do some other stuff and bits and bobs, because he's a great client, and he always pays me on time. There's never any problems and what have you. So it works for him as well, because I hate to say I go the extra mile. It sounds a bit I do it, again, back to the same analogy. I do, he's one of my regulars, and I do give him extras,
This list of songs for your album, I've got 12 customers queuing at the back door, and I give my regulars extras, which is I think we've got side 1 done now. Definitely.
We certainly have, yes. He said I was the only one, so I gave him more paint.
Yeah, exactly. I gave him an extra layer of dry brushing.
Quite, yes.
So yeah, did you do commission work before you went to the States? Did you used to paint, or have you done anything before?
No, I mean once or twice maybe, but only for friends, and then for like not very much money, or not really. No, definitely not to the extent I do now. Because I say now it's like my income, it's my profession now. So this new client came in who was actually, bizarre enough, dragging it back to other people. He was a friend of Mark Freeth. So Mark Freeth said, "Oh, if you're in America, look this guy John up. He's good," because Mark's one of my cheerleaders on Facebook. He's always sharing my. I do the same with him and his Wargames Holiday Centre things. I always share it on so that he can get more customers and stuff. So we both share the same clients. That could be the B side of one of the trucks.
Sorry, a lot of your figures are at the Holiday Centre, aren't they?
I wouldn't say a lot. There's a fair few of them, because I had a big Napoleonic Russian army and a French army, and I sold a lot. I didn't sell a lot of the stuff because I painted a lot of it when I wasn't anywhere near as good as I am now. But Mark took some of my nicer stuff, because it was when I was doing all this selling off. It's when he had the Holiday Centre down in near Basingstoke Way, where he lives, obviously. And he had a lot of my Russian stuff off me. And it's nice to see it occasionally in photographs, still stamping over the worlds of Leipzig and
well, he does seem to photograph them quite a lot, Mark. They're always on.
I think he's just he's just hopelessly devoted to me, to quote Olivia Newton-John.
Oh, we're getting a theme.
Dear.
I did some painting for the Holiday Centre when Jerry and Mike had it, and one of the things I want to do is when I bob down to the new location is to have a look through the racks and see if I can find them.
Yes,
see if they're still there.
Yeah.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
But no, that the Holiday Centre is I think a definite mecca for big gamers. It's where a lot of people, I think, got their inspirations. And when I was listening to your conversation with Mark, obviously he was saying that he walked in there and saw the Borodino battlefield laid out, and I had pretty much the same experience, I have to say. And the first weekend of running, say, a corps of 20 or 30 battalions, each one 30 to 40 men strong, with a attendant artillery and cavalry, it's a big thing, It is,
it is.
And the game, on your feet for a whole weekend, and just the concentration and all this sort of, it's the drive back on a Sunday night, all back down south again, was always like quite a trial, I have to say. And also because you see all these friends of yours, you go out and you perhaps have too many beers, and I mean, I've got stories about myself and Mark and Chris Cornwall and all that, and we used to go and do just stupid things around Scarborough.
I
think
what happens at the Wargames Holiday Centre stays at the Wargames Holiday Centre.
I think it has to do. There's stories about going to dubious clubs and pretending to be Russians, and oh man, it's just nonsense, absolute nonsense. So pretending to be a Russian, that could be another album title. So it was a whole encompassing thing with the game as its centre, but you got to see all these people, and I've made a lot of really good friends who I would literally just see at the Holiday Centre. And of all that long weekend, it was quite a trial. I remember I did a couple of the campaigns, the week-long campaigns. Obviously, when Mike Ingham really sort of came alive. He loved doing the campaigns, and he really got into doing all the it sounds very dull, but it's not. He got into doing all the paperwork between each game, how the campaign was evolving and stuff like that. And I found it all fascinating. So I went there with Chris Cornwall and the recently sadly departed Herbert Gratt.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that
on
man.
Facebook. Yeah. And the three of us shared a hotel room for a week in this in the little Sylvanian hotel we used to stay in. And it was just like a sort of a 3-boy frat dorm room for a week,
Yeah.
We were like washing socks and hanging them up. And then the three of us, then little Herbert's in his romper suit doing his press-ups in the morning. And there's his little pink bum going up and down. And go, what the hell's going on here? And Chris is mumbling because he wants to go out and get a cigarette, but we're on like the 5th floor and the windows don't open,
Oh,
and so we had that for a week. And then we also had like like nearly a dozen games all fitting into it. But at the end of the week, we were absolutely exhausted.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine.
As it should be, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were picking your favourite period to game, then would that come back to Holiday Centre and Napoleonics? Or?
I think so. Yeah, purely for the again, I'm not overstating the splendour of the whole thing with the flags and the. And I like order, so all the straight lines, right angles, columns, all this sort of thing, but all of that having to fit over an undulating terrain, and the multitude of things you have to think about when you're defending villages and trying to fit, because they were very clever at Holiday Centre. They would like have woods which were 5 cavalry figures wide, the gaps between them, and your cavalry squadron 6 figures, and stuff like that, which little subtleties, which meant, of course, all those little 5-man Russian Cossack squadrons could just slip through, like, and lots of all the things you have to think about. And the old adage that it's like chess with 1,000 pieces, it's actually true, because there's so much to think about.
Yeah.
That I used to, I mean, again, it sounds a bit overblown. I used to enjoy just the mental challenge, and when you did a plan and something happened and these figures got there just in the nick of time, and these figures, the enemy figures would retreat, and you happen to have your light cavalry within charge distance of retreating enemy, and just, hacking down poor innocent metal figures. It just gave you some relief, when it all worked out, which it rarely did. I mean, I got my derriere handed to me by Steve Scott and Dave Doherty and lots of other people down there many times. When you can't physically have any more figures routing, it's like the whole lot's going on. Sorry.
Now you're in the States, have you managed to build up any collections of stuff yourself? Because you said you sold most of them off.
Well, I sold most of my stuff off. I did also sell off I had a large Wars of the Roses army, 2 Wars of the Roses armies each side. And I sold those off to a guy in the Wargames, the Huntingdon Wargames Club, a guy called Nigel, a good friend of mine. And when I got over here, I really missed them more than anything else. And so I phoned up Nigel and said, look, is there any way I could buy them back off you? And Nigel, being the absolute king of men that he is, sold them all back to me, because I think he just caught the desperation in my voice.
Brilliant.
And so he sold them all back to me, and then boxed them all up. And so I got, a huge package arrived with my Wars of the Roses army back in it. So I've still got my big Wars of the Roses army, but I've got some 20mm Crossfire World War II stuff, which I painted while I was over here. Yeah. And I've recently got into doing some of the large Warhammer 40k games, the Apocalypse rules they're called, and they are for big games, because I played a game of the normal 40k, and it just seemed like a skirmish game, an excuse to roll huge amounts of dice for not very much really happening. Apologies to all the 40k gamers, but it wasn't for me. But I thought, I don't really like this. But there was a game going on, a big 6 foot by 15 foot, I think it was, in one of the back rooms, as it were. I looked at it and went, oh, this looks good. What's going on here? And there was all the larger tanks and the sort of bipedal, sort of 2 foot high Titans and all this stuff going on. And it's far more epic and apocalyptic looking. I thought, this looks great. So I sat in on that. And it was far more what I was after. It was more about organizations and formations and your individual superpower character having a handheld twin overhead Brill cream dispenser. Didn't really make any difference. It's more about the large armies. And I thought,
well, my lad has done a bit of Games Workshop, but it's something I ventured into once with the now infamous Tetley bit of Space Marines. And I'd pasted up a squad, and they'd all got the Tetley bit of badge on the shoulder pads and everything, and painted up in the colours of the can, and apparently I wasn't taking it seriously enough.
Oh dear!
So I didn't. I actually sold them off in a box full of bits. So we mentioned this in an interview I did a couple of years ago. So they are out there somewhere. So if you've got my Tetley bit of Space Marines, I'm thinking of redoing them, because I've learned how to make my own decals, which is pretty dangerous.
There you go.
So I just need some donor figures.
Yes, quite.
and I'll redo them. Just before we move on then to the next section, I'll just finish the introduction off with the Venn diagram of wargaming.
Okay.
Do you remember the Venn diagrams?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant. Well, each person has a different personality, obviously, when it comes to wargaming. And I've broken it down into wargamer, painter, collector, historian. How do you see yourself fitting in those different categories, and how do they fit together?
How do I fit on this this spectrum?
This imaginary Venn diagram.
Yeah, well, painter obviously would have to come first because that's my job. But if we're talking purely sort of recreational, I suppose I'm painter, gamer, historian. What was the fourth one?
Collector.
Yes, that's it. I'm collector last because I only ever buy stuff to paint. You know, I don't. If I buy like an old, I mean, some people on Facebook got very upset with me once because I bought an old 40k blister pack because I wanted the figures in it, and so and you did you open it in front of them? I just ripped it open and painted the figures. And
there's been people crying
a week later, you know, and people genuinely were like going, "This isn't what you should be doing." I'm going, "This is exactly what you should be doing with them. You know, make them fulfill their destiny." So I'm not really a collector, but I enjoy painting stuff for myself as well as for my job, and I love the gaming aspect of it. Not much of a collector and historian. I'm okay history wise. I know enough let's just say I know enough to get out of an argument about it
and get on to something more important. I don't think I've told this story on this podcast, but we had a guy who was stalking us for years, the Yorkshire Gamer Group, because I put scenario posts and game posts up, and we called him Palm Tree Man because we were playing a desert game, and his complaint was that there was no palm trees in the desert.
Okay.
And we just kind of just ignored it for a while. Yeah. And then about the third or fourth game that I posted up, he's back on again. You've got palm trees and there's no palm trees in the desert. Well, I was ready because I've had some experience in the legal system over my years. And I'd got a photograph of it was an Italian fort during Op Compass in 1940-41. And I got a picture of the fort that we were fighting over, and there was palm trees outside it. And so I put that up. And his response, which I shall remember forever, was, I think you will find that there are 5 palm trees in your photograph and 6 on your table.
Oh, for God's sake.
So now, if you look closely on any of the stuff that we post on Yorkshire Gamer, any of the games that we play, there is always a palm tree somewhere on that table. If you look closely enough, you'll find a palm tree, and that's our little reminder and our little giggle.
Fantastic!
And I do often wonder what he's doing. You know, if you're just like flicking through the internet and going, why is there a palm tree in that 16th century Italian wars game set in northern Italy?
It's sadly the inability of anybody on Facebook to say, actually, I was wrong. You were right. Well done. And I've done it myself a few times. I said, I was absolutely wrong. You were correct. Well done. And people just like freak out about that. They assume that you're just like taking the mickey or something. You go, well done. I was actually wrong. There should be more of it on Facebook, you know, people admitting they're wrong and moving on.
Yeah, and people having sense of humour, because most fail very quickly, unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. And the same with a lot of gamers who just take things. I mean, there was a lot, obviously, dragging us back to Mr. Freeth again. He was saying on the episode he did with you about how he has to deal with every facet of gaming and overly competitive. I've played against a couple of people who just blatantly cheating, you know, the old rolling the dice behind a village and telling you what they were and all this sort of thing. And then usually like Jerry Elliott or somebody will just wander over to my side of the table and just sort of hang around a bit as an umpire, and it all stops, you know. and you wonder what is it in your life that makes you want to cheat at toy soldiers, you know?
Yeah. Did you did you ever meet anyone who did the artillery limber shuffle?
Oh yes, the when you snake the artillery across the table and get all the extra moves out. Oh yes.
Yeah. So you for those listeners who aren't aware of this this cheating move in Napoleonics, what you do is when you are limbering your battery, you've got a battery set up, so you're going to limber it up and move it. So you set your limber up in front in the direction that you're going to travel, and instead of measuring from your battery, you measure from the front of the limber. So in 28 mil, it's going to be a foot, isn't it? At least a foot. And then you unlimber from the front of the battery.
And
you unlimber from the front. Yeah. So you turn the limber around and you get an extra foot, and then So we've given that little cheat secret away now. So it's probably a good time for us to take a break before we ruin any more people's games. And we'll be back in a second with a chat about big games. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and before we ended up in a Crown Court somewhere with something we said on the previous end, on the end of the last bit, we've done all the litigious stuff in the break, and we're back to talk about big games, which is at the end of the day what this podcast is all about. So the first question I ask people in this section is, if you say big game, what comes to mind? What are your thoughts as soon as you say big game?
Well, for me, it's the first thing I think has to be the spectacle. People have to like come into. I was when I did particularly the biggest game I ever did. People come through, like all the people thronging around watching it, and they would come through to the table and they would look at their little 6-foot bit of the table and go, oh, this is great. And then they'd like their gaze would wander up one way and up the other way, and it disappears into the distance. You see that look on their face and go, my word. Actually, they'd say usually something a bit stronger than that. But it's the initial spectacle of the layout, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what you see first. You see the table first, and then if you then see the fact that there's thousands of figures on it second, I think that's a good thing, because you see this huge piece of landscape, and all of a sudden you go, oh my word, and there's like hundreds of figures or thousands of figures on it, and you go, my. And then the third thing you see is the fact there's like, I don't know, 14 people playing it. It's just it's like a very loud rock concert. I'm going to tell you now that big games are like Motorhead at Hammersmith Odeon. It's like the feeling of togetherness and oneness you get when something is a bit over the top and loud, and you're sort of looking at the whole spectacle as a thing, as an entity of itself. It's like a very good friend of mine, David Kenyon, he called it a visual moving tableau, and I like to throw that in when I'm trying to sound pretentious. So
that's good.
It's the whole thing. It's the whole spectacle. It's the whole show, And I think if you're doing it properly, and also it's actually, I mean, a personal pet hate of mine is when people put on a demo game, a show, set it all out, and then just sit around and don't actually play it. That annoys the hell out of me. It's being played as a game, and it's a huge game, and you have to have like people talking to the crowd and stuff about what's going on. You can't just be hunched over rules and ignoring everyone. You have to make it an event, make it a spectacle, get people in, not necessarily involved in playing it, but tell them what's going on, answer people's questions, be friendly, be outgoing, all this stuff which a lot of war gamers aren't generally known. But I mean, make it a thing, I think, is what I can only say. That's why I wouldn't want to play a massive war games holiday center style battle every week. I think as Mopin said, I've always preferred an occasional orgy to a nightly routine. I think that holds true for large games, And also, by the end of a particularly big game, you should be exhausted. You should feel like you've actually jumped into armor, or gone up the great redoubt of Borodina. You should feel like it's really taken something, but you've left something on the table. It's like what's the old quote? After the third after the third day of an orgy, even Bacchus has had enough. You should feel that you've got nothing left to give. I don't want to roll another dice for at least another 2 weeks. I don't want to do this ever again. And then 2 weeks' time, you go, do you know what? I'd like another big game. So you need to like really go for it, to use stupid common parlance. But you do need to make it a thing. That's what I can say.
And how big are personalities in those games, especially at shows?
To be fair, I've done 3 or 4 big games that usually it's Salute, because at Salute you could drive your van or your truck.
Yes, I remember those days. Yeah,
you could drive it right into the center of the plate and set up next to your table. Because if I was trying to move all the stuff that I use for some of the games through corridors in Sheffield or devices or something, I just couldn't do it. So Salute was always the best one for me to do the big games there, because you could drive your truck in and then unload it next to your area, and that made all the difference. So, and I often used to do these games in conjunction with the aforementioned people from Huntingdon Wargames Club, people like Mark and Nigel and Daz and Boot and Chris Cornwall I mentioned earlier, and a good friend of mine, Carlo, who sadly passed a few years ago. And they always used to they knew what I was after, they knew what I was like, they knew the style of stuff I wanted to do. They all used to just throw themselves into it and help me set up and then play the game. And because they gamed with each other on a regular basis, it's just I used to invite certain people and not invite other people.
Right.
People who I knew would rub along each other nicely and get the game done. And all the games I did, it was always very, very, very good spirits playing the game. And I did a big, I think, again, going back to some of your other threads, pulling it all together, I did a large game of Trebia in 54mm at Salute, and Mark Freeth was there, and he joined in on one side. And everybody really just enjoyed the whole game. And what you can't tell, when you put together like a particularly massive game, like when I did with one of the games, you can't tell if it's actually going to play as a good game. It might look fantastic, but it might be an awful game. But I've been very lucky, and I think more through luck by judgment. I'm not much of a games master, I have to say, but the games have all been really good as games, and people have been engaged and playing them. And I tend, to be honest, not to play them at the shows. I tend to, myself and a couple other people, talk to the crowd. Because once I've done it all, it's more like, to me, like hosting a party. You invite all your friends around, have this massive game, and then they can just get on with it because they know the rules, and I could just let them, answer any questions they may have which haven't come up, because I've pushed some rule limits to their absolute rule sets to their absolute limits for some things, which we can discuss in a second. But I like other people to be really enjoying themselves. I'm sure Freud would have a lot to say about it, and I'm sure it involves my mother and father, but I like to see other people really enjoying the games that I put on,
Yeah, I think one of some of the negative aspects towards big games, which is why I started this podcast, to share this love again of quite clearly what you're talking about there, was going to shows and seeing big games, and the people who were putting on them on were antisocial and just playing the game and not talking to them.
I think it's important to engage with the public, and I would specifically have depending on the size of the game, but between 2 and 4 people who I know are outgoing, articulate, intelligent, and can engage with the public. And also occasionally you might shout something like, 30 cores at Nijmegen, and everyone goes, just to get some people going along with it. And things like that. I think it's important that, as I said, people just hunched over rule sets and not engaging with the public is just like having a game at your local club. Don't come to Wembley and then kick a ball around between the two of you. Play the game. Do it in the spirit to which the venue demands. And that's why I think if you're going to do something like Salute, you need to you need to sort of step up, I think, and make it worthy of what you're trying to do.
Without a shadow of a doubt, and I think there's a lack, maybe not a lack, but people don't seem to want to aspire to do those huge games. It seems to be, you can buy a box and there's 10 figures in it and you play the game. But we've got these 10 figures now. Why don't we do 30 next week.
Yeah, that's where I've always come from. But I mean, there are people who just don't have the time or the space to do that, and then some people, and then if I see a set of rules that says you can do Waterloo on your kitchen table in 2 hours, I think, well, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
But other people see that and go, fantastic, that's just what I want. So there's room for both. I see that and go, I don't really want to do that. I want Waterloo to last a weekend and be physically exhausted by the end of it. But that's
if you've painted 10,000 28mm figures for Waterloo, the last thing you want is for that battle to be over in 2 hours.
Exactly. No.
You've just spent 4 years of your life painting 10,000 figures.
Exactly.
And right, we've finished now. What do you mean I'm not even set up yet?
Exactly. But as I say, I think there's space for both ends.
Without doubt.
Yeah, there are some people who don't, I say, have the time, inclination, or want to paint that many figures, and there are other people like me who, I mean, I'm easily led by friends who know what I'm like. Especially when I was in Britain, I would do like I did, for instance, a friend of mine, David Kenyon, who is terrible with me. He just leads me on and then winds me up and lets me go.
Yeah.
He painted a few 54mm Zulus and British infantry from the Call to Arms range, which were really nice. And he wrote a set of rules called Dave's Zulu rules. And we had a couple of
excellent, like that.
And a couple of games, and I thought, this is good fun. These are nice rules. And then there's probably some pictures I shall send you about it. And then a year or so later, I painted up like 300 Zulus in 54mm, and I've built all of Rorke's Drift, and I've made the big hospital with a lift-off roof and all the rooms, and I've converted lots of figures into the characters from the battle, and that is quite a pattern, It was, again, Mr. Kenyon who brought me a copy of Crossfire, and I was trying to write a set of Wargames rules for World War II, and I read Crossfire, which are they were a very popular set for a little while. I think they've died off a bit now with all the other new World War II rules, but they had no movement rates and no ranges, so you had no tape measures involved.
Yeah.
And when I first read them, I thought, this is the set of rules I'm trying to write. So we, again, had a little skirmish game, some 20mm figures, and then 10, 12 years later, some of the stuff which we talk about soon comes about, and I'm taking up large bits of real estate in Salute's main hall. with two countries, I'm easily led, and I as soon as I see something, I think, I would, not so much now, but I think those figures would look great if there was like another 300 or 400 of them.
Yeah,
that would look even better if they were 54
that's how
my brain set.
That's how my mind works, and I do struggle sometimes to realise that other people think differently to me.
Yes, exactly.
I look
at a very viable way, but it's not the.
I look at some figures, and I look at Italian Wars is one of my big things. So I look at a pipe block, and it's got 20 figures in it, or 24 figures in, and I can't look at it without going, it needs at least 128 figures
absolutely,
in that, and they need to be a lot closer than that.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, you probably know. Again, coming back to my friend Chris Cornwall,
I know Chris.
Got a large collection he's been doing this year and the end of last year.
Yeah.
And he is very much of the same ilk, and I admire that greatly.
Yeah, no, it's just the way my mind works, and I don't mean to upset or belittle anyone with that, but that's just, I just look at things and go, oh, that'd be a lot better if there was a couple of 100 figures.
Coming back to album titles, that would be a lot better if it was bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, we are definitely of one mind of that. And that's the way my brain works, and that's what led me to the huge collections that I sold off to various people. Lots of my stuff went to people who have been on your podcast, of course.
Exactly. And did that selling off, was that quite a sad time, or did you just move on?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it was a big piece of my history, but I was going off on another adventure, and rather like coming back to the Freudian aspect of it, rather like it, I was really happy that people I sold it to were so pleased to have it,
Yes.
And it would then get used and gamed with, and so I it was a mix of like, oh, that's a bit sad, but also I'm really glad these guys are going on to other stuff and new campaigns in new countries, some of them, and I took a little bit of pride in that, and then the fact that people, as I say, were so pleased to have them, and a lot of my stuff was quite. I wouldn't say it was a famous collection, but it was in Wargames Illustrated. Lots of people knew about it, and for people to own that, it's like me saying, "Oh, look, I've got this unit that Peter Gilder painted." Not that I compare myself to Peter Gilder for anyway, but it was a recognisable collection. So it going to various people and then being happy to have it and then happy to game with it as well. I've got a little bit of pleasure from that. So the two offset each other. So I didn't really have that many regrets, other than my Wars of the Roses army, which
you've got back,
which I got back anyway. Yeah, which now lives in my basement. So I was very happy about that.
It was Dr. Chris Brown who's got some of your 54mm stuff.
Indeed, yes.
We'll talk about later on. Yeah, and he was very proud to have that. Very proud.
Yes, it was. I listened to it. I was very pleased for him to be so happy to have it. Chris Brown, the professional Scotsman.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. We didn't enter into politics.
But yes, that was great.
And they going over to Arnhem a couple of times. Well, I think they're going over again in September.
Yes.
So that to have that collection there is
yes, no, absolutely. Cool. It makes. I'm not one for self-promotion, but it does make me quite proud that my boys are in other campaigns and doing other stuff, and people are happy to have them. So yes, I'm pleased that people like them, shall we say.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, we're going to talk about some of the big games that you've done later on. That's going to be our main topic. So
okay.
we'll this section is normally a little bit longer, but I'm going to kind of just ask one more question just before we finish off this little bit. And that's kind of harping back to something we talked about 10 minutes or so ago. And that's people being wary of the big game now and not kind of wanting to cross over and moving from skirmish. Sometimes there's good reasons for it, but sometimes it's a fear of a big game. What would you do or what would you like to say to encourage someone to go big at the end of the day?
That's a good question. And although I'm not sure that I sort of work in a missionary way and try and entice people into the hobby, but I would tell people that when you get a large game, you tend to have you're not like one person aside with 25,000 figures each. You have a command which just happens to fall in with everybody else's command. So I know a lot of new people come in, and I mean a couple of times I've had new people. Someone's like come to one of my games at Salute and said, "Oh, can I bring my son?" I go, "Yeah, of course you can, no problem at all."
Yeah.
And so he's like going, "Oh my word, what on earth do I do?" I said, "Right, well this is your command. You've got these boys, these boys, these boys, and these. You are part of his command. He's got all this other stuff, and he's in charge of all that sort of thing. And he's going to tell you what he wants you to do with your command. And how you do that is up to you because you're in charge of you."
Yeah.
And he'll go, "Oh right, okay." And so you sort of don't let people get overawed by the fact that this massive table isn't all theirs to try and control. They like it does in actual military parlance. It breaks down into divisions and brigades and what have you, and you are in charge of an amount of figures, and how you achieve what the guy in charge wants you to do is pretty much up to you. So there's like a little bit of command and control to make you feel looked after, as well as there being a lot of space for your own individuality in it as well. So I think just don't get overawed by the whole thing. It breaks down into manageable chunks, I think, and then you are then part of the overall victory or defeat.
Yeah. I think a lot of the skills that you learn as well in big game, when you're playing one against one, it's kind of like a chess game, and there's no flanks, there's no people left or right. Yes. There's nobody next to you.
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention any names, Ian, who does something daft, and you've just planned out this fantastic maneuver, and you look to your left, and there's this ginormous hole because he's decided to go and have a look at an oasis 12 foot away or something like that.
Which is part of the fun, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's all part of it, and those. The negotiation skills that you get, the emergency planning you put something in place, some idiot next to you messes it all up, and you have to reorganize things.
Yes, it
very,
also
very
teaches
quickly.
you proper military things like keeping a reserve for such occasions.
Yes.
And just a quick aside: when I first played in the Grand Manor, I played it with like half a dozen battalions aside, and I thought, this is nonsense. This game's rubbish. The command and control is non-existent, and it's nonsense. But it's because Gilder wrote it for his big games. When you play it with 50 or 60 battalions aside, it suddenly becomes this whole other animal.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, but you can have individual battalions going off and do anything. You go, well, you can, but they'll get utterly mullered, and you can't just go wandering off and do stuff. The command and control is, at essence, one of the best ones in any game because it is literally individual commanders.
Yeah.
You don't have to fake it with dice rolls because it's already there because you're playing on such a big game with so many players. So when they play it with, I say, not many battalions, it's nonsense. But you get up to what it's meant for, and you suddenly something clicks, and you go, I understand why these rules work so well now.
Very true, very true. Well, thanks for that little chat on big games. We're going to come back to that in the big topic at the end. But it's that time. It's that time of the night. That time that we go for the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. It's been going for 10 episodes and we haven't been sued by anyone. We've upset a few people, so before I start, I'm going to say the disclaimer once again. The opinions in this quiz are mine and mine alone, and you could disagree with them, and you're probably right, but because I am resident in Yorkshire, I will tell you that you're wrong. We'll just have to get on with it from there. So, have you heard this quiz before, John?
Yes, I've heard it a couple of times.
No worries at all. It's quite straightforward. There's no 10,000 word dissertations on Bavarian flags of the 1809 campaign. It's purely yes or no, or one or the other, and it's just reflecting what my opinions are rather than what's truth.
Absolutely. I'm limbered up and ready to go.
Ready to go. So, question one: go big or go home?
Go big every time.
Contrast paints, are they great or are they a gimmick?
They are great for what they were designed for, and I don't like people just slating them because they're Games Workshop.
Oh, I'll give you a half for that. When it comes to paintbrushes, and some of these questions, you might be aware, will have a regional bias in them. So, first regional bias question: when it comes to paintbrushes, will you buy Winsor & Newton or Yorkshire-made Pro Art?
Winsor & Newton every time, I'm afraid.
Another one. Shocking. That's all I can say. The factory used to be across the road from where I worked. So, yeah. 96 figures. Is that an army or a pike block?
96 figures isn't even quite a full company. So it's not even a pike block, as far as I'm concerned.
But yeah, if I could give you an extra point, I would do for that. A 6x4 table, is that a big game or a small game?
No, that's the set up artillery board behind the big table.
Right, okay. We'll get on to what you think's a big game in the next section. And I think people are going to be a little bit shocked. When you're setting up a game, do you like to go for a points-based army or a historical order of battle?
Historical, 99% of the time.
When you're doing your painting, do you like to mix your paints on a wet palette or an old bit of MDF?
Old bit of MDF every time. I've never in my life, even as a pro painter, used a wet palette, I have to say.
People use them all. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
Popular.
It just seems to be, I'm going to get myself in trouble again here, but it just seems to be like a latest gimmick that people use, and I don't want to quite understand. And people go, "Oh, it stops your paint drying out."
Yeah, well, I mean, but to be fair, people who use them, I have seen some incredible models they've painted. So I'm not offensively against them. I just don't use them myself.
No, I think for an individual figure where you're trying to win, is it a Golden Demon? Where
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. then it's a Golden Demon. That's a Chinese restaurant near us. That one. I don't see the point of it. But anyway, especially if you're doing big armies, it just slows you down messing about. Anyway, we've digressed. Undercoating figures, black or white?
This is going to sound really stupid. I tend to always use grey. I'm exactly in between, but I'm not a big fan of the black undercoat myself personally.
Yeah.
So if choice the two, I'll have to go white, I suppose.
Okay. I'll give you half a point for grey because it's in between the two. Another regionally based question. Would you drink Yorkshire tea or a dirty mucky coffee?
Yorkshire tea every time. I love it.
Superb. You're building a war games unit with some figures. Do you like to see them tightly packed or socially distanced?
Depends on the era. Tightly packed, I would have to say, out of the two.
Superb. You've got an option, a chance of a game, and the choices are a 2-hour club game or a weekend monster game.
Well, going back to my occasional orgy, I have to say a weekend monster game.
Superb. This is the Nick Skinner special question here. Avocado, are they just posh mushy peas?
I think avocado was dictated to somebody who then misspelt it, rather like aluminium and aluminum. So I think they're nonsense.
Thank you. That's another one of my little... well, I'm carrying too many placards down the road, and there's another placard already designed for the next question as well, and that is round or spherical dice. Are they allowed or banned?
I shudder at having them in the same country as myself.
They're just horrific. In fact, nobody has been on this podcast yet and said that they will allow round dice on the table.
No, I like big D6.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean a foot across, but I mean nice big D6 with easily readable dots on them. Not all the silly little symbols and stuff like that. I just like a nice big chunky corners rounded off handful of D6. Yeah,
the spherical ones, you roll them on the table and they literally take out half of your men.
Yeah, it's not. I'm gimmick dice. I'm not a fan of. Oh no, bar humbug and harumph and read the Daily Mail and all that. I'm not interested.
Yeah, we've had people turn up with dice in different languages, like Arabic scripts and stuff, and then of course you can't tell what they've rolled.
No, it's not. It just feeds into the war gamer. I'm mad, me. Look, I'm mad. No,
yeah,
you're not. You're an idiot.
Yeah. Look. That is definitely Sumerian, ancient Sumerian for 6.
Oh, God.
No, it's not. Right.
No.
Would you pay 33 pence for a communist?
I would do, but then of course I'd have to share it amongst everybody else as well.
Like a collective.
Yes.
Excellent. Do you like a good table and a set of rules, like a casualty table, something to look up?
Well, being a big fan of Grand Manor, that was all running your fingers down tables, +1 for the regimental vote and all that sort of thing. But as I'm getting, I like to get more turns in and have a simpler set of rules, which we'll come to later on, personally.
No worries. Question 16, 28 mil is king, yes or no?
Well, I would have said no, because I was obviously a big 54 mil fan, but in the scheme of gaming, I would say yes.
Yeah. Unpainted miniatures allowed on the table, yes or no?
No, there's a special place in Hell reserved for people who do that. Again, that's just my opinion. Other opinions are also available.
Oh, yeah. But again, that's one question that in 10 episodes nobody said, yeah, it's fine. So
it's just a personal thing.
Yeah. Statistically, from a sample of 10, nobody. Can you tell what course I've been on recently?
That's 100%.
That's 100%. That. Right. So, question 18: Bradford City or Leeds United?
Well, I'm going to have to say Leeds United because Cambridge United once beat them in the FA Cup at Cambridge.
Oh, yeah, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. I like that one. Yorkshire or the other place over the hill?
I don't really know what the other place over the hill is.
The Red Rose.
Oh, you mean the
say it.
shining mecca that is Lancashire?
Oh, that's it. Oh, my computer's
Well,
just shut down now.
I've had some wonderful times in Yorkshire,
Yeah.
and I've been to Lancashire only ever for work. So I'm going to have to say Yorkshire.
Oh, superb! I like you thinking. One guest chose Yorkshire because he'd been for a night out in Leeds and had a lovely kebab.
No, I've had some great nights out in Yorkshire. All told, really.
So the final question: Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil?
If you read the Facebook things, all their fans are also their worst critics.
Yeah.
I just think they are a massively popular company who's British, and we should be equally proud of them for taking the taking it around the world and making it into a massive conglomerate. And if you don't like their pricing system, don't buy their games, really.
Very much so. Well, you've done quite well. You've got 75%.
Oh, hello.
Which is not bad at all. That puts you in 4th place. There are a few joint 80%, but 75% is very reasonable indeed. So congratulations, John. And we'll move on to our final section where we're going to talk about proper big games.
Okay.
Well, a lovely effort there at the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. Another top result there, 75%. 60% is still the lowest that we've ever had, which I'm quite surprised at. But obviously, everyone thinks like me. That must be how it is. So I'm going to paraphrase Crocodile Dundee here, because those who've seen the film may remember when old Croc was attacked by somebody with a knife. And he turned round and he drew this massive knife out of his pocket and just said, "That's not a knife. This is a knife." So, to all those people who've said you can't say 6 foot is a small game, Ken, you can't say that because it's going to upset people. I said it was an average game, to be honest. But this lad that we're going to talk about now, my 12-foot table is he'd just have it on the side and have his like army lists on there and stuff like that. So I'm going to hold my hand up and say that I'm quite a small gamer compared to John.
There are those who would say I'm overcompensating for something, I'm sure.
Well, exactly. we all start. So we've got to start with, I mean, you might correct me, but we've got to start with the mother load of games. And that it was the Market Garden game. Oh, yes. So I take it this is on your list of things that you've made notes about.
It's top of my list. It's my dark side of the moon.
So for all those people out there who are thinking that 12-foot tables are big, just run us down the vital statistics of the Market Garden game.
Okay, it was Market Garden, but it was all of Market Garden. I originally just thought about doing it, and then I'd settled on a 40-foot by 6-foot table.
Yeah.
And then I kept adding in stuff. So when we finally turned up at Salute, it was 72 foot long by 6 foot wide.
So just say that again for anyone who missed that.
It was 72 foot long by 6 foot wide. I think there's a couple of photographs I'm sending you of the entirety of it. So 72 foot, 6 foot wide. It was all of Market Garden. It started off in one country with 30 core, which was, if you set 30 core out end to end, the column was 20 foot long.
Yeah.
This is all in 54 mil. It had all the major bridges, Nijmegen, Arnhem, and Son Bridge, all built from little L-shaped girders that I got from a hardware shop. I'll try to think what they call it now. I've been over here for too long. And they're all hot glued together and sprayed and cleaned and done. So it was all those all those bridges. Arnhem was right down the other end, commanded by a guy who was actually in the parachute regiment. So he had his little beret on, and someone told me he thought it was really offensive that someone would wear a beret like that. So I just said to them, "Go and tell him that. Go on, I dare you." Anyway, and then all the right down the other end was 30 core with about let me see, about 60 Shermans was the Guards Armoured Division, plus artillery, 132nd scale Typhoon aircraft, German flak guns, 88s. Oh my word! There was about nearly 200 vehicles and about 700 figures in 54 mil.
Yeah.
It was all played using crossfire rules, which, as I've said, have no ranges or movement rates. So you had to be a bit careful with blocking lines of sight on the table. 3 large bridges, Nijmegen, the town of Nijmegen, town of Arnhem, there was Sonbridge, Bailey bridges, canals. Oh my word, it was a beast. When you go to Salute, actually, I can tell you a little story. When you go to Salute, there's a weighbridge you go over, or you can go over.
Yes.
And the game of Market Garden weighed nearly half a ton.
My word.
Just under half a ton.
Yeah. So we're not talking about size of games now. We're talking about weight of games.
This was a half tonner. Someone came up to me at the show, who I vaguely knew, and he quoted me a great line from Jaws. He looked at the tape and he goes, "My word," he goes, "that's a 50-footer." And I went, "No, mate, that's a 72-footer. All half a ton of her."
So did you have a bus service running around it? How long did it take to get from one end to the other?
What we did, which I got a little bit of flack for, actually, we had 16 players, I think, and because there's no fixed turns in Crossfire, all the American paratroopers in the middle, John Frost boys down the ends. The Germans are all coming on at various points to try and cut the road. It was all 30 corps going up the road to various places. 2 guys ran 30 corps. We had a Allied air commander, an Allied artillery commander, I believe, and then the Germans came on with various different thrown together formations. You've
got a big game when you've got an air commander.
Yes.
Right, what am I going to do on this 72-foot table? You're in command of the planes.
You're in command of the Allied Air Force, yeah. And obviously lots of German flak guns, so I had to make up rules for flak, and I had to make up rules for... It started off with a creeping barrage as well, as famously portrayed in the Bridge Too Far, which is a wonderful scene.
Yeah.
So we had lots of 25-pounders, and people got extra kudos from quoting from the film.
Oh, so, superb. The
guy in charge of the artillery is going, right, well, it starts off with you. Richard, I think his name was.
Yeah.
Starts off with you, Richard. He goes, okay. He goes, right. He goes, all guns, commence firing. And that's where we went. And because it was all based on 3-foot boards, the barrage would creep forward a 3-foot board each time on the throw of a dice. It might lag back a bit. You might have to hang back 30 corps and not lean on the barrage too much. So we put a lot of extra bits into it for that. And as I say, the games were being played at all the points on the table in their own time frame, really, because there was no fixed term limit. So as 30 corps reached the first American Airborne Division, they would then fall into their sort of turn rate, and as it went on down the game, because right down the other end of the game, the 2 guys playing the British Paras in Arnhem, they were literally using binoculars to look down the table to see where 30 corps was. And which was fantastic. He said, I brought my old field binoculars with me, because he was in Royal Horse Artillery in the Parachute Regiment, which always conjures up images of horses with parachutes. Yeah. And he had his field glass and he was looking down the table and shouting, "Where the are you?" And the 30 Corps commander, which was Chris Cornwall, actually, was going, "I'm near Son." He goes, "Oh, for God's sake!" He was going, "Get a move on." And so we had, communication problems of our own, which was just delightful, absolutely delightful. So so it was a huge game. We started playing it 5 minutes after the doors opened, and we finished it, I think, about 10 minutes before the doors closed. It was played constantly throughout the day. And for people to get around it, I put like a sort of a velvet rope barrier about a foot away from it, so people could move around.
Yeah.
And people said I was being a bit snobby about that. And I said, no, I'm purely because people need to get around to play the game, because it's a game. But just ask, and you can come through and take pictures and all that sort of stuff. So we did that a lot as well. But some people just like to have something to complain about. I do vividly remember one guy was looking at the game going, "Well, it's lovely and all that, but that Panzer IV, that's the wrong mark. Yeah, that should be a mark something, and it's a mark something else." It's a shame you didn't take the time to do that. And I just he looked at me and I just waved an arm down the table and go, yeah, I just really haven't bothered, have I? But it was all, I say, the whole thing was scratch built. All the buildings were made out of plywood and painted, and it was 2 years to do it. For a one-day show. It's ridiculous, really.
And have you gamed it more than once? Have you had it on? Or was that was the only time?
Market Garden in its entirety, once at the Salute, and then we did various other permeations of it at the Wargames Holiday Centre for a weekend.
But not the full shebang.
No, but it was just a one-off thing. Well, as I said before, it was a one-off event. There was 16 players in it, who all said they had a fantastic time.
Yeah.
And people still talk about it now. At the time, it was the biggest game Salute had ever put on. I don't know if that record still stands. I've got no idea.
I honestly can't imagine anyone's put a longer table on than that.
But I've had people say to me, "Oh, that was you. Oh, I remember that." And even people in America going, "Oh, yeah, I saw pictures of that in so and so. That was incredible." I go, "Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you." I said it was 2 years of my life for one day. It was absolute, to be honest, waste of time, but it was well worth it because it was, as I say, it was quite a thing. People still remember it. It was great, and it again, purely by chance, it turned into a really good game as well. It was very tight right at the end. The British Paras had to surrender about 15 minutes before the game ended, and the 30 core was just getting over Nijmegen Bridge, so it followed historically really quite well, and it was purely because everyone just threw themselves into it and played it in the spirit it was intended, and it was just a really good experience. The day, it was fantastic.
So where did all the 54 mils not a normal in inverted commas gaming scale? So where did all the figures and the vehicles come from?
Well, I got to be quite an expert of trawling eBay and stuff, and for the Shermans, actually, a American company called CTS, I believe they were called, which stands for something, like and share. Let me know in the comments, as they say on these things. And they re-released the Airfix 1/32 scale soft plastic Sherman.
All right, yeah.
From our youth, and I bought loads of them, and then just covered them in camouflage netting, nice resin crew figures, converted some of them into Fireflies with 17-pounders and various bits on them, and they look great. They look really good, but I wasn't too far. I had to sort of draw a line between modeling and a gaming piece,
Yeah.
So some of the German stuff I left off little tiny width judges and wing mirrors and stuff because they would just get broken. So but I still airbrushed all the German late war camouflage, as you'll be able to see all the photos and stuff. And the figures, the British Paras, a lot of them came bizarrely from the Airfix 1/32 scale range from our youth. Again,
oh yes, remember those?
Because they were still beautiful figures, so crisply cast, and they were a little bit under 1/32. They're actually nearer to 1/35. So they fitted in really well. A lot of other stuff came from kits made by Dragon and Revel and people like that, Model Master and all these little 6-figure box sets. So that's why it took so long to get, because a lot of them I was assembling, and then other companies made American Paras. Again,
I've just got this vision in my head now of a couple of guys somewhere in the States who make 1/35 54 mil Shermans, and they bring it out and they think, well, we're not going to do much with this. And there's somebody, well, it's going mad. We've got an order for 60. We've got 60. Oh, bloody right. Put a deposit on a yacht.
Yeah,
right.
I bought a load of them and painted them all up. When they came out great, I used lots of.
They've probably sold about 3 since, haven't they? Bless them.
I made all the camo nets out of surgical gauze. It's very thickly woven, and pinned it out on a board and sprayed it green, and then covered it in PVA and draped it over all the turrets of the Shermans and added lots of stowage like they had. And they came out great. I was really pleased with them. And they when I sold lots of stuff on eBay, I had to point out that these are soft plastic Sherman, blah blah blah. So they still went for a lot of money. And I kept going, you do realise, look, here's a picture of the underside. Look, it's a toy tank sort of thing. And people were still paying lots of money. I thought, well, fair enough. I've tried my best to warn them.
Yeah, I don't think you would have had any comeback, because I think the soldiers from that game and the vehicles are quite instantly recognisable.
Yeah, they've gone to a lot of people.
Yeah,
But a lot of people say, "Oh yes, I bought his collection." I have to say, "Well, actually, no, you didn't. It was huge.
I
It's
can
gone
imagine.
to, like, a dozen people all over the world."
One thing that did interest me about that setup was the infantry. They were on like a tray with raised up sides.
Yes.
What was that? What was that for?
What I did was again, it was made out of offcuts of aircraft aluminium, and I put them on the folder and folded the sides up, because, especially with the hard plastic, you got some really in scale tiny Bren gun barrels and Sten gun barrels and stuff, and they wouldn't last 5 seconds with people just grabbing the figures.
Yeah.
So the little flanges on the side, although they weren't the prettiest thing, that was how you picked the figures up. I did it deliberately. I had a little briefing beforehand, so this is how you pick the figures up. Don't go grabbing them, clumping them all together, because they will just snap like nothing on earth, or they'll bend and flake all the paint off. So that's how you move them around and pick them up. So I did that.
That's interesting, because we have little briefings here before games, people are warned that the pike blocks are real pikes.
Yes.
And we had an English Civil War game probably 10, 12 years ago, weekend campaign, and every single member of the campaign, must have been about 10 or 12 of us, all of us were going home with like plasters on our hands, because we'd all got lacerations from all these pipe blocks.
Yeah, you can brief them, and they only do it once.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to say, don't touch this, don't do that.
Right. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Within 10 minutes, somebody's bent something, and somebody's impaled themselves on a group of lancers or something like that. Yeah.
But as I say, luckily, the group of guys from Huntingdon Gaming Club who did the game with me, they are all, I would say they did as they were told. They all realised why we did it. And lots of people, again, say, "Oh, I don't like it, it spoils the look." I go, "Well, yeah, but it's a gaming piece. It's not a diorama."
Yeah.
So that's why I did that. Yeah, it just makes them easier to move without breaking stuff and all that sort of thing.
So a couple of interesting questions then. How long did it take to do the whole thing, to get it ready to go? For a couple
what setup?
Yeah, no. From putting your paint on your first miniature to having a 72-foot table.
2 years.
2 years of fairly hard, fairly constant.
2 years of. Well, I used to work shifts, and I used to work 4 days on, 4 days off. So probably 2 or 3 of the 4 days off, I would be squirreling away, or down my shed building buildings and making stuff and making bridges and all sorts of nonsense.
Sheds. Where would we be without sheds?
Well, I said myself and the inimitable Mr. Cornwall, we built a shed down the bottom of my garden to put a 15-foot by 6-foot gaming table in, and it moved all the stuff out the house. So my girlfriend at the time was very pleased. So we built this huge shed, and that then got used for my workshop for making building Arnhem and all the terrain boards and what have you.
Well,
it's pretty much based on the classic Gilder sawdust paint and PVA glue mix slopped over everything. That's based on that and then dry brushed.
Yeah, I mean they are very heavy, that style of terrain.
Oh yes,
my
they certainly
God,
are. Well,
God, they're resistant.
You get enough of them, they're just under half a ton.
Yeah, exactly. And you can sand down wooden doors with them when they're dried.
And you can't, people don't lean on them with their bare elbows for very long.
No, you get carpet burns of the wrong type from those sort
absolutely.
of,
and I used the crossfire rules because after half an hour, you can keep most of the rules in your head. So there's not the usual demonstration game thing of lots of charts and stuff all over the table. So you get rid of all that. And I just put some charts taped to the side of the table you can lift up and look at for various things. And I also put some of the armor values and gun values. I painted them on the back of the tank mud guards as like a tactical sign. So you can use that as well. So it keeps all that clutter off the table, which is another pet peeve of mine.
So the whole idea for it then, was that yours, or were you led down a garden path by somebody else?
That was all purely me. I think I just watched a bridge too far, and I already had a few paras and stuff, and
I thought you were going to say a few pints.
In the way that I do, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be good if I did Arnhem? And then I thought from that, wouldn't it be good if I did blah, blah, blah? And then it just ended up with, well, let's not mess about. It may even have been Chris Cornwall again, said, let's just not mess about. Yeah. You do the whole thing. And I went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened, you know. But with the crossfire, no ranges, the Germans did a big counter-attack and cut the road where 30 Court was, the Hell's Highway, whatever it was called, with some Panthers. And they got walloped by British Achilles 17-pounder tank destroyers from about 15 foot away.
Bloody hell.
And I said, well, you know, you have to reevaluate what's going to go on, because you can't go, well, they move 6 inches a turn, so I can do this before they get to there. There's none of that, you know. So he had just left himself exposed, and these tank destroyers just walloped him. And he's going, where's that coming from? And the guy is 50 foot away is going, they're coming from me. He said, oh, for sake. You know.
Yeah, you have to have a very good tactical concept of where things are.
You have to, you know, don't leave any flanks, and you know, that sort of thing. But with 30 Corps, it's very difficult because they're all stretched out down this road, and there's German stuff coming on to do it, and then they counter more stuff in villages and towns along the way, and like just individual little battle groups thrown together with a couple of Panthers and some Pack 40s and a company of infantry, or a company of dismounted tank crew, which I did as infantry as well. So there's all sorts of ramshackle thrown together, as well as, of course, like big formations like 9th SS and stuff, which bless them, they did attack across the Arnhem Bridge and got piatted to death. So, full kudos to the 9th SS guy. Said, well, I wasn't going to do it, but I thought, what the hell?
You've got to. So
they, as I say, the spirit was there. The full spirit was there.
So when you put all this together and you were ready to go, and you contacted the organisers of Salute, and you know, you fill your form out. What size table do you want? What did they say?
Well, initially it was going to be 60 foot, which is the form I filled out.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, I said, I'm really sorry, could I have 72 foot? And the guy, it may have been John Treadaway or someone like that. I can't remember, but he was a big fan of mine. He liked my sense of stupidity, I think. And he went, no problem at all. He goes, we'll shift this and we'll shift that. 72 foot, not a problem.
Brilliant.
And so I set it all out, and they moved, not another game, they moved like some display booth or something and put it somewhere else. And it was to do with the South London Warlords, the Salute crowd. So they were more than happy to do it, because it was such a... And they then also, when I got there, they moved me as well to be right near the main entrance when people come in. So it's one of the first things people saw. And they said, do you mind if we move you to here before you set up, because we'd like this to be one of the first. I went, absolutely, that's a big compliment. Thank you very much indeed. So we set it took about 2 hours to set it all up, 2.5 hours to set it all up, about the same to rip it all down. But I had people going underneath with little squares of wood and screw guns, screwing all the boards together and then appearing out the other end like 20 minutes later, you know. And people just dived. And then Chris came along, because Chris works in the sort of entertainment industry and setting up big parties and marquees. And he came along and staple gunned like fabric down the side of it to hide all the rubbish underneath it, you know. And then he had some proper lights down the end and a little sign saying what it was and all this sort of thing, and a big Union Jack down the other end. And so it was quite a team effort from that regard of making it a thing, you know, an event, a thing.
Because I remember when we put Jutland on, which was 24 foot by 8, which is nothing compared to 72 foot. We struggled to get it into any shows because everyone was going, oh, that's a big table.
Yes,
we can't fit that in.
Yeah, that's why I could only ever see me doing it Salute, because we couldn't have transported it without being 2.5, 3 foot from the truck that brought it in, you know. It just couldn't be done. There's no way.
So that leads us on then to, if we're sticking with 54mm then, and another game from Salute, the 54mm Ancients.
Oh yes, we did. That came actually from, again, this came from the inimitable David Kenyon, who made up a few stands of Polybian Romans, Camillan Romans. I can't remember now, to tell you the truth. Which came from... Oh my word! There's a Hat made a whole range of really obscure like Italian allies and Spanish cavalry and all this stuff, and Carthaginians and Romans, and so we had a few games of that. And then in the way that happens, I thought to myself, this would be great with like 80 elements aside or whatever,
Mm.
which happened to coincide with a series of articles in Wargames Illustrated saying, 3 big battles for DBA. And so I said, well, I'll just do it with DBA. Because to be honest, the rules for me are pretty secondary to the spectacle, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
If they provide a good result, I'm more than happy. I don't need to be running my finger down endless +1, -1 charts anymore.
Yeah.
And so DBA was perfect because we could put all the stats on the back of the base.
Yeah.
And again, have all the rubbish off the table. And it gave a good result of what, well, it's ancient warfare. It's many T-shirts with sticks hitting each other.
Yeah. Who's got the biggest stick?
Yeah, it's a good representation. And also it's got, again, a lot of subtleties to it when you play it as a big game and you group elements together and do this sort of thing. So I just started buying, they were very cheap, these box sets from Hat. And I saw one for Trebia. And I looked at the Trebia one. I thought, oh, this looks quite good fun. Lots of Italian allies and Spanish cavalry and all sorts of Carthaginians with the great big round shields, all the different designs on them. And so I just started painting those up. And then we designed a table, which was, for some reason, 6.5. I remember it was 6.5 foot by 15 or 16, because we made it out of one great big piece of canvas and made a mixture and worked this mixture into the fibers of the canvas and built the table out of this lump of canvas. So at the end, we rolled it up, put it in a great big cardboard tube I got from a carpet shop and just took it home. So we just rolled it out and then put some terrain on it. And it was, it's become a bit of an infamous thing now. It took place in the winter. So we had to make some snow for it. So we used table salt and then a thought from a friend of mine whose name I shall leave to the wild, so as not to incriminate them, suggested we mixed in stripper's body glitter with it to give it a little bit of a sparkly feel.
Okay.
So it also smelt faintly of vanilla, I understand. So the snow was table salt mixed with stripper glitter, so it gave a nice little twinkly thing under the lights. Yeah, and it looks really good, actually.
That must be the one and only time that stripper glitter has been used as a wargaming.
So rock and roll, mate. So there's an interview somewhere on YouTube about that particular edition of Salute, and they interviewed us at the end, and I mentioned it, and the guy gets very excited. So we had about 40 or 50 elements aside, and played again with the Huntingdon Club, and Mr. Freeth came in again. And Mr. Freeth just begged us to give him all the Gauls and the wild barbarians, and he just grouped them all together and, in inimitable Mr. Freeth style, threw them all at the Romans, and they all got massacred. But
he does have a reputation for charging off.
He was happy as as I say, happy as a kid with a slice of cake. He was a very happy boy. So we played it through twice, I think, in the end, and it was really good fun, really good game. I enjoyed it a lot, and I sold the whole lot as a single entity with the board and the rolled up piece of canvas and everything. It just went to a friend of mine in Cambridge as a single entity. So I'm glad that's still about. I do regret actually selling that as well, because that's bordering on quite bizarre, I have to say, and I wish I still owned it, I must admit.
So that friend in Cambridge, does he now own a strip club?
I would hope so, or at least something that smells vaguely of vanilla in his bedroom.
Oh, brilliant! So, how long ago was that game then?
Oh my word, that would have been. I really would like to say 2012, maybe.
I think I have seen a picture of it somewhere. I'm trying to
maybe about. I'm a bit vague on a lot of dates for these things, but about 2012. 2011, something like that.
I've definitely seen a photo. I'm just trying to rack my brains to remember where I've seen the photograph, but I'll remember, and I'm sure I'll dig it up for.
No, it looked great because all the serried ranks of Carthaginian spearmen, again with all their big thick metal. I replaced all the soft bendy plastic ones with big metal pikes and spears, and everyone got all their spears replaced because they were soft plastic bendy nonsense. And and then the number of figures on each base, I did the same as DBA. So the sort of skirmishers, the Roman, I can never remember, Hastati, Principe, and whoever they are, they had fewer figures, and the
Velitz Astati Principe Triarii, that's it.
Yeah. So they all had a number of figures on each base, dependent on what they were. Rather like DBA says, spears or Siloi or whatever. And we played it with just straightforward first edition DBA rules, no amendments, no nothing, and it gave really good games. I mean, God bless DBA as far as I'm concerned. It was wonderful.
Yeah, really good. It's still around. It's still going. So clearly, people like it.
For what we were doing, like Crossfire, it was perfect for a display game because there was nothing on the table apart from dice and tears of the Romans.
As it all went badly wrong.
It went badly wrong for the Romans the first game, but I think they learned and do what Romans always do: came back and crushed every resistance.
Well, the next game I've got on my list, and I've only got 3, so you might have some more, was one that Mark Freeth mentioned, and something to do with the Campbelltown.
Now, to be fair, I have to be full honesty here. I never actually did it as a game. I had it all planned out in my head, but then my head was turned by a lovely American girl.
Yeah.
But the plan was we were going to do Saint Nazaire, and we were going to set up the town of Saint Nazaire. I was going to build Saint Nazaire basically with the dock gates of the town of Saint Nazaire, and then paint up loads of British commandos, German garrison troops, naval troops. It was going to be another huge undertaking of stupidity. Then I was going to build a sort of 8-foot Campbelltown, HMS Campbelltown, which, for those who don't know, was disguised as a German destroyer to sail down an estuary past all the German gun batteries to ram the dock gates, and then all the commandos would pile off, and there'd be a big fight in the town, and they would then have to get back to Britain. Called the greatest raid of all time, and I concur. So I was going to build HMS Campbelltown, about 8 foot long, a sort of scaled down 1/32nd scale model of it. Disguise it as a German destroyer, which they did. Put it on a hostess tea trolley, and then wheel it to the game past all of the traders.
Yeah.
And this was going to be the beginning of the game. And then the first time that one of the traders goes, "Isn't that Campbelltown?" Then the balloon goes up. That was so everybody in this trading row was going to be part of the game. I would then give them dice and say, "Roll those 3 dice for us, will you?" And they're all going to be a shore battery.
Yeah.
And then damage would be taken on board with HMS Campbelltown. So hostess tea trolley down the end with a big old 8-foot Campbelltown on it, or German ship, whatever it's disguised as, squeaking away, wheeling down these trailers. And the first trailer goes, "That looks like Campbelltown." I go, "Wow, yeah, but is it? It may look like Campbelltown." The next guy goes, "No, that's definitely Campbelltown." And this was the plan. And at the end of it, my friend said, "Well, I've got a better idea." At the end of it, again, Mr. Cornwall, with his knowledge of theatre and pyrotechnics, says, "Well, at the end of it, why don't we blow it up?" I said, "I'm sure that somewhere in the regulations of the XL Centre at Salute means we can't blow it up."
Oh, yeah. If you come back to England, that's got to be done.
I think absolutely. Now, you see, we could put up perspex screens and all that, and we could literally at the end of it just blow the whole thing up, because I think that would be fantastic.
Well, as part of Leeds Wargames Club, we run a show called Fiasco at the Royal Armouries.
Oh, indeed, yes.
And
well,
trust me, if you want to do that, I will arrange it. There's a big it's not a blast door, but there's a big door at the back of the at the back of the hall that we use, where traders come in and out. So we quite happily blow stuff up there. Fantastic.
It would have to be one of those little tiny twist detonators as well for a proper period feel.
Yeah, we might.
No, I would. If I do, then I will. There you go. It's an on-air promise.
Oh, definitely, because we might put a bit of shrapnel in Dave Thomas's van. But he'd be for it, would Dave? He'd love
Dave
that.
Thomas, what a great guy.
He would love that. He'd absolutely love that.
That'd be good fun. And then have a big old fighting in a city game of Saint Nazaire with all the British commandos and blah blah blah, and then at the end blow up Campbelltown, destroy the dock gates. That'd be fantastic.
I'd probably retire from wargaming at that point, because I would have peaked.
Yeah, exactly. I'd look at that and go, "Do you know what? I can't do any better than that."
Yeah.
I was a bit like Market Garden. I thought, I can't top that. I'm not going to bother.
You see, we've been saying to people, don't give up with your big game aspirations. And we're just jacking it in after we've blown the Campbelltown up.
But we couldn't blow up a hostess tea trolley. That would be
no. That would be
just a step too far.
Exactly. So, have you got any more on your list, John? We've been talking for a while, but I'm quite happy to carry on.
I did reuse a lot of the British equipment and the German equipment. I did. I think Mark Freeth may have mentioned I did Goodwood at the Holiday Centre.
Yes, I think I've seen some pictures of that. That was
in the Normandy campaign, and we. I don't know if people know, but Mark's old setup used to be a 6-foot table, 3-foot gap, 6-foot table, 3-foot gap, 3-foot table.
Yeah.
If you follow me, with a big gap down the middle for people to get it. So what we did, we went down there and I filled in all the gaps with extra boards. And then there was great big holes in the middle of it, 3-foot holes, where a person would stand. And that was like, and then I'd put buildings around it. So that would be one of the villages or a large wood or something. So for that game, it was 27 foot by 21 foot, I believe the table could be called as. And we did all of the initial opening moves of Operation Goodwood with, again, Guards Armoured Division and lots of German defences, lots of like 88s and in-placed Pack 43s and all this like obscure stuff.
Yeah.
But that also, again, with Crossfire, but that also brought a new element to Crossfire, which I devised, which was a raid by Lancasters. The Allied player would pick a line of boards across his front, and that would be the line of boards that the initial Allied air bombardment would take place. And you could roll a dice; it might creep forward one way or creep forward the other way. So there was a danger, like in Cobra with the Americans getting accidentally bombed by their own B-17. So it started off so Crossfire, which began as a company level game with a tank or two, became a core level game with Lancaster support. You know.
Well, that's
so
what we
off with this.
That's what we like to hear.
Bombing raid, and then off they went, and lots of 88s, lots of Shermans getting brewed up, all very historical, and lots of little individually fortified little German towns. Well, I should say lots of towns fortified by the Germans, and lots of weird like French stuff.
Yes, because they brought a load of stuff in, didn't they? They had that tank training school nearby, didn't they?
Major Becker had like nailed lots of Pack 40s onto Hotchkiss chassis and all sorts of nonsense, which of course are manna from heaven for model makers. They love that sort of stuff.
Oh God,
I could get lots of it easily, and we did all of Operation Goodwood again, which was a huge game. And there's some photos of it I'll send you, but that was great fun again because it was another massive game, and people were in little holes in the middle of the board, like popping up, and so was their little village, you know.
Was there like a navigation system under the table when you were crawling under?
It was like being underneath the Globe Theatre in London, you know, people like wandering about, popping up, going, "Where the hell am I?" That was great fun. That was really good because I also, for that, I expanded the force a little bit and had things like minefields and Sherman Crab flail tanks and bulldozer tanks and Sexton mobile artillery with Shermans with dummy guns as spotters and all sorts of nonsense. And I got to crack out a couple of Tiger 2s as well. And
perfect.
Again, lots of Typhoons and cab rank Typhoons and rules for AA fire and German 20mm quads and all this sort of thing to give the air player a little bit of tactical input as to what he was doing, which direction he's going to attack from, and what the AA could do to him if it was heavy AA or light flak or whatever, and then move lots of more elements into it. And Germans using like old Russian artillery howitzers and pieces like that, and Nebelwerfers affecting like an entire 3-foot board, but not being particularly effective, but being able to saturate an area and all sorts of stuff. Because with Crossfire, it's a very open system. Once you got past the basics, you could bolt on all sorts of weird nonsense, and it just didn't affect it at all. It was very robust in that way, and I still like it now. I've still got a set myself.
Yeah, it's a set that I've never played or tried to play.
No, it was very revolutionary. Again, no rulers, no ranges. If you can see it, you can shoot it. No fixed term times. It freaked out a lot of people, I must admit.
Oh, I can imagine.
You have to look after your flanks, and because people could just wander all the way around your flank if you haven't defended it properly. In
So
one.
what restricts the movement then? Because
the only thing that restricts movement is when the opposing player sees you, shoots you, and stops you, does something to you.
Right. Okay.
And your little infantry section is either perfectly okay, or it's pinned, which means it can't move but it can fire.
Yeah.
Or it's suppressed, which means it can't move or fire.
Yeah.
Or it's killed. And that's and you can keep all the basic rules after half an hour in your head. And it's very. I mean, I don't like the term, it's an elegant system, but it is. It's very robust, very elegant, and it's very, very simple. But it's really good. I'm a big fan. Really good. And because it's so robust, I said you can just bolt on all sorts of weird stuff to it. Like as I said, like Lancaster raids and cavalry Cossacks, and armored trains and rolling barrages, and all sorts of nonsense. HMS Campbelltown.
Exactly. So, if you have you got any plans buzzing around your head for something else?
While I'm over here, my big game plans do take a bit of a hit because I'm working a lot at the moment. Especially at the moment, I'm trying to work as much as I can to pay the bills and stuff and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I am sort of building up slowly a large 40k army for Apocalypse, for the big rules of Apocalypse, because you need a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've managed to get hold of a couple of the large old star resin Titans, and I've got another couple sort of building when I get a chance and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I haven't got any major projects myself outside of just doing that at the moment. But I sit here a lot with like sketchbooks and stuff, and I design games. I think, I could do that and that and that, and I could do that. Oh, how about something based on most of El Alamein or something? I just sort of like my mind wanders sometimes, and I think, perhaps some of the big Knightsbridge boxes in the desert, and have some big games based on endless barbed wire and Panzer IIIs, and and I'm thinking, and I just like get my sketchbook and I'll start sketching stuff out. I'm sure I'll be like an artist not appreciated in his own time. People will find these when I'm dead and go, "Oh, look, he was a genius." And then somebody else who knows what it is goes, "No, he's not. He was an idiot. Look at the state of this."
We go, he was the start of the biggest movement.
Yes, he was a visionary. No, he was an idiot.
Yeah, look at this tiny 2-foot square game that we've designed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, somebody will say he was an absolute visionary, and somebody else will say like, no, he just didn't know when to stop.
Yeah, taking it too far. It was a good idea at 6x4, but he's just taking it too far.
Indeed, I to be fair, as a self-promotion, I excel at taking things too far. I really do.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all, mate. And that's
there's
what we do here.
There should be no boundaries to nerdiness, as far as I'm concerned.
Excellent.
If you're going to be a nerd, be the biggest nerd you can be.
I can't disagree with that. And you're talking to the right guy here. There's no I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm absolutely crap at skirmish gaming. We decided to do desert when Perry's brought the plastic. 8th Army box set
very
out.
Much so. They were a shift, weren't they?
Yeah, we said, right, the 6 of us who game it at my house regularly, and we'll each buy a box of figures and the tank, and we must be on 1,000 figures and about
lovely,
and about the Blitzkrieg models had a 50% off Black Friday sale about 5 or 6 years ago, and we bought well over 128mm tanks in that, plus all the other stuff that we had, and it's just gone crazy. And that's that's our skirmish level gaming.
Gives me a warm feeling in my heart. And also, God bless the Perrys. They have done for gaming.
Oh my word, yeah.
So much, and they're all their stuff they're bringing out, all their Napoleonics, their Wars of Roses stuff. I love all that early 8th Army and Africa Corps stuff, which was quite a shift at the time into boxed plastic sets. It was quite a risk for them to go out and do all that sort of stuff with the initial cost. They are, I can't say enough good things for them. They are. The word legend is thrown about, but they are both. I mean, I've spoken to them a few times, and they are absolute legends and lovely people.
Well, they've opened up, obviously this is a big game podcast, they've opened up big game into a lot of people, or the ability to big game, because the cost of a I've just ordered a couple of units, 28mm units from Gringo 40s, and that's cost me 75 quid.
Yeah.
I could go to, if I smile nicely at Dave Thomas, 72 quid's going to get me 4 boxes, maybe 5 boxes of Perry's, with 200 figures in. And that I've quadrupled the number of figures I've got for the same money. And there's a lot of people who in the past have maybe balked to the financial side of a big game who can now go, you know what? 20 quid a month.
There are box sets of Napoleonics and ACW and what have you. Are just, as far as I'm concerned, they've revolutionised big games, especially, but also what people consider to be the cost of a cavalry regiment these days. Because an old, for instance, connoisseur, an elite, 48-man Austrian cavalry regiment, now you can do it in plastic, and the figures also are absolutely beautiful. I mean, they're really, the quality of plastic stuff has just shot up.
Yeah, because you forget how you forget how big, certainly like you say, Austrian cavalry regiments are absolutely huge, and then you'll see them warlord games of Black Powder with like 12 figures, and it's like it needs to be a bit bigger than that, mate. But the cost now,
some people like
the cost of as you say, 48 plastics, you're not even going to be up to 12 metal, are you, with that?
No. And also the quality is just superb, absolutely superb. And they when they do stuff, I mean, they know, the Perrys know their subject as well, so they know that sometimes, for instance, a French line infantryman from the Napoleonic Wars will tuck his forage cap into this particular place, and so they'll mould that on. So it's touches that they, and when they do like their medieval stuff, they really know about that, and it's just absolutely spot on, And I have nothing but massive praise for them. I think they're absolute visionaries. Really, they really are.
I've found with their stuff that you can make like little vignettes within a pipe block, for example, just purely from the stuff that you get in the box set. You're not going off kit bashing and stuff.
Definitely, and they're like little metal ranges they release with each of their big plastic stuff to fill in, and you get some like with the Wars of Roses range, you get little wagons and women loading up barrels onto the back of a wagon and all this sort of little stuff, and little vignettes with large bombard cannons and lots of guys running around and doing all sorts of things, and they just make the whole thing just look, again, a visual moving tableau. Absolutely fantastic.
I'd love to know how quickly they do a figure.
Well, there was a thing on that TV show, How It's Made, which dealt with them.
Oh, right, I missed that one.
It's very hard to find. I sort of hunted it down on YouTube, I think, and it showed how they did, I think it was British Napoleonic Hussars, and it was fascinating. It could have gone on for 2 or 3 hours as far as I was concerned. As a sort of like engineer type myself, it was fascinating how they have to make the steel molds and all this sort of thing for the injection molded plastic, and the money and outlay. It was quite a thing for them to do, I think, when they first did it. I mean, obviously now they've got good resources, they know what sells, but it was quite a step for them, I think, to do their first plastic box sets, and I'm pleased that it's really paid off for them. Of course, other companies now like Victrix and what have you, Warlord, do the same sort of thing, but I'm a bit of a fanboy, I have to say.
No, very much so, and it's still all hand produced as well, rather than there are other companies that, although they're really nice figures, you can tell the computer designs rather than than handheld.
They're still stuff. Green stuff over armature. They're still I like that.
Old school, mate. Old school.
Yes, old school is the only school.
Well, just before we go, John, I give everyone an opportunity at the end to ask me a question if you've got one. Did you think of one before?
Has doing this podcast given you hope for the future of big games? There you go.
Oh, well, no, that is a good one, because it has very much so. And for those who didn't listen to the pilot episode, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts to and from work, and it's something I hadn't listened to for a long time. Well, it's something I hadn't listened to at all, because I was listening to music and talk radio and stuff like that, and I just wanted something relaxing, and I enjoyed them very much, but there was very much an air of 28mm, you can't do that in 28mm, and you don't want to do a big table, and 3,000 figures, that's way too many, that is. So I kind of had a few beers one night and decided to, you know what? There should be a big game podcast, and then after a few more beers, it was like, well, I'll bloody do it then because nobody else will. So yes, I certainly hope it has. I've received quite a lot of support and emails and stuff, very positive.
That's good.
One guy wrote to me, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he said, "Thank F for that. I'm sick of bloody skirmish games." So, although there's no, there is, and I've said this, before. There's no right and wrong in a hobby. Everyone has their own little niches.
Absolutely.
But sometimes one of those niches gets forgotten about, and the big game was drifting out of fashion, and was not talked about. And I've been pleasantly surprised by how many people listen to this, and how people, and I've had one guy last couple of days ago go, "You know what, Ken, I've listened to your podcast. I'm now going to do a big project, or 100 Years War project." His wife's packed bags, and the dog's walking off behind him.
But surely, someone inspired to do a big game is the best compliment you can get for this series, really.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. I'm not trying to say any other type of gaming is wrong, but what I'm trying to say is that big gaming is absolutely superb. And when you get into
this is what
it,
your podcast is about. Other games are also available, but this is what you want to talk about. So.
You get once you get into it, and you get the friends aspect and the social aspect.
Yeah.
And I've yet to have a conversation where anyone says to me, "Oh, 15 years ago we did this game and it was on a 3-foot square table and it was brilliant," and then go on to regale stories about it.
Yeah.
You don't have the guy at the end of the table with binoculars shouting at the guy who's running 30 core. Where the bloody hell are you?
Exactly. There's definitely more of a narrative and more of a story going on, simply because of the size of it. You can't avoid it, really.
Yeah, and the people involved and the friendships that you make and the laughs that you have with a big game are what it's all about.
Definitely, yeah. The people playing the game, there's a lot of people, as I say, lots of my friends from the Huntingdon Club, they're all great guys, and they all played it in the spirit which I intended it to be played in. So I could not even get involved with the game. I just chatted to the public and, answered questions, knowing full well they were going to just run it and do it. And they did, and it was terrific. So, as in most things in life, the people you do these things with make all the difference. And if you surround yourself with the right people, then you'll have a far nicer life and a far better game as well.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Well, we'll say good night at that point, John. Thank you very much for your time this evening. It's been much appreciated. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, Ken. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been good fun to relive a lot of old nonsense that I'd forgotten about. It's buried deep away in my synapse, So Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much indeed for giving me this ridiculous platform.
Excellent. Good night, John.
Good night, Ken. Good night.
What an absolutely lovely chat that was with John, and it's great to find a similar mind, somebody who thinks the same as me, who looks at a table and is never happy with the number of figures on it, and always thinks that you can get more figures on a table or more figures in a unit. And I'm glad to know that I'm not the only person who thinks that way. And I'm not going to ramble on at the end here, because I appreciate we've gone over the 2 hours, which seems to be most people's target, if you like. So that just leaves me to mention the guest for the next episode, which will be episode 11, and hopefully will be released on the 23rd of July. And in that episode, I am going to be speaking to Stephen Wald, and Stephen is a big thing on the Twitters, and his handle is @OldWargamer, and he was one of the original Wargamers, or first Wargamers on Twitter, and he's got quite a large following on there. But he's into his big games. He's got a lovely home set up down in Australia, so we're going to get a bit of a perspective on how the gaming hobby is down there, and looking forward to it. It's going to be another great chat, and hope to see you then. See thee.